This episode highlights a writer's experience applying the principles that I teach and implement with my writers. So I'm talking about a writer who you might be able to relate to. Like many of you, she came to me with tens of thousands of words, but no direction for them. And I want to tell you about how she took those words and then used an editorial strategy customized to her work to make sense of the draft that she'd already written. So raise your hand if you had a hard time, either currently or in the past, with finding the thread of your memoir. And I'll talk about what that means in a minute. You're just shuffling scenes around, hoping that something will click, throwing spaghetti at the proverbial wall, hoping that you'll get lucky and that something will click and it will all magically make sense. You're waiting for a magic wand. But no matter what you're doing, it all feels disconnected, right? So one of my clients was stuck in this exact spot. She had written tens of thousands of words. And I mean, that takes a lot of time. I've written tens of thousands of words, and it takes a lot of time. But she had no idea how to organize them into a compelling narrative. So in today's episode, I'm going to share how we uncovered her story's actual meaning and how we built an editorial strategy to give her the clarity that she needed to actually make progress in her writing. First off, though, let's talk about the thread. And there's a lot of different terms for this. So this client told me when we first started our work together, I can't find the thread. And that was a phrase that she used a lot. And so let's talk about what that means, because there's a lot of different terms for this word that all kind of mean the same thing. So you have the thread, you have the hook, you have the message, you have the thesis. Those are all iterations of the same concept. You're trying to find the meaning of your story. You're trying to find what it is about your story that perhaps is universal. You're trying to find what it is that's going to make your reader care. Because there's a difference. Let me use an example of journal writing versus memoir. And I've used this example in a few other areas in my work before, but you do not want to read a memoir that reads like journal entries. If you look at your journal, you're going to see this happened and that happened. It's very much a telling experience. You are just kind of throwing what happened onto the page. Journaling has its place. Absolutely. You can include reflections in your journaling. Journaling is a very valuable practice for any writer, for any person, writer or no, right? No one wants to read a memoir that's a journal. So what a memoir is a memoir is a narrative with an underlying message. You have the story, which is your life, right? But your story is the vehicle for the thread. It's the vehicle for a deeper message. Because, and I've said this a lot, and I don't think that I'll stop saying it because it's so important, your reader does not care about you. They care about what you did with what happened to you. So you need to figure out what it is about your experience that's going to matter to your reader. And it's this framing of writing for a reader that is so essential and often highly overlooked in memoir writing. Memoir writers come to the table with the content already there. They don't have to figure out what's going to happen next in the story because they've lived the story. This is creative nonfiction. So they think that makes it easier. And in some ways, it does. You come with a box full of memories and experiences. You don't have to go around collecting it or fabricating it like fiction writers do. However, this is also a crutch because you can trick yourself into thinking that because you have the content there, that it's all important or that it all matters or that your reader is going to care about it as much as you do. Think about an experience you've had with someone, whether you're out to dinner or on the phone or what have you, and they're telling you this story that happened, this thing that happened, that they clearly care a lot about. I'm thinking of my children. My children come to me with different stories from school or with friends or dreams that they had. Oh, when they come and tell me the dreams they have, they will go on and on and on. And to them, it's really important. And because they're my kids, for that reason, I try to listen and track what they're saying. But it's not interesting to me. There's a lot of things that like my kids will tell me about things that happened at school that they thought was funny that I don't find funny. But again, because I'm their mother, I listen and I laugh, right? Your reader is not your mother. Maybe your mother will read your journal, but the person that you are ideally writing for is not going to care about all the things that you care about. You need to find the elements of your story that your reader is going to care about. And you do that by finding the thread, by finding the message, the thesis, the hook, by figuring out what it is about your story that's going to make them care about your story. So this client, let's go back to the client story. That was a bit of a tangent. This client told me when we first started our work together, I cannot find the thread. She felt like every part of her story was important, but she didn't know how to make it all work together. And the trick is that she didn't need to make it all work together because it wasn't supposed to all work together, right? She didn't have a clear structure. So she just ended up moving scenes around, hoping for the best. Again, this is a very common way of coming at memoir revisions. It wasn't working because memoir isn't supposed to work that way. And again, I'm going to reiterate this. This is so common for memoir writers because your story is personal. It takes some practice to detach yourself from the actual events of your story to write it in a way that's going to connect with a reader, and to do so in a way that doesn't invalidate the parts of your story that don't make it onto the page. And it's really easy to get lost in the details and feel like you're just spinning your wheels over and over. We go into the writing, like I said, with this box that's full of material and stories. We think we have everything that we need, but the truth is that we have more than we need, right? We don't have an editorial strategy to help us figure out what it is that we actually need in the story, what it is that our reader needs us to include in the story. We have way more than we need. And editorial strategy is going to help you cull that down. So the key for this writer was figuring out what she actually wanted to say with her memoir. So once we nailed down that message, we were able to build an editorial strategy to guide her revisions. So this included deciding which scenes served the thread, the story, and which ones didn't. We created a flexible outline so that she knew what to work on next, so that her writing time was maximized. She was writing smarter, not harder. And then she got to let go of the misconception that everything has to stay in the manuscript. And there's that common writing idiom that you have to kill your darlings. And that is true to an extent, because there are elements of your writing that are not going to serve your writer that you will have to cut from your final draft. And there is an element of emotional intelligence that goes into being a writer, into being an author, writing for a reader, that just because you have to take something out doesn't mean that it is without value. It just means that it might not be valuable to this specific reader, right? So for this writer, the biggest aha moment was realizing that her memoir didn't need to include every experience. It needed to include the right experiences. We needed to curate a reading experience for her reader. And that's what we do in my high-level memoir editing, is we curate that reader experience for the reader. We shift our lens as writers from inward to everything about our story to outward, to figuring out what it is about our story that our reader needs to know. So after just a few calls with this writer, she had a very clear plan for her revisions. She finally knew what her story was about and how to bring it to life. And with that clarity came confidence. That's the key. This editorial strategy is not just about the nuts and bolts of your story. It's not just about the thread of your story. It's about what that clarity brings to you emotionally as a writer. So she had confidence. She was excited to get back into the work. So if you are feeling stuck, I want you to ask yourself this: what is the one message that I want my reader to take away from this story? Because once you know that, then you can start shaping your entire manuscript around it. You're going to start shifting your entire writing revisions experience when you can answer that question, right? If you are struggling to find the thread of your story, I am here for you. I'm here to help you. That's what I do. Join my email list for exclusive insights and strategies to bring clarity to your writing process. I will put the link in the show notes for you to sign up for that. That is the best place to stay connected to me and this world. You can also follow me on Instagram at Charlotte Jane Wright. So let's get your story moving in the right direction. And please email or DM me with the wins that you have as a writer as you are starting to refine and implement your own editorial strategy, because that is the ticket. That's what's going to change the game for you. And I can't wait to hear how it works out. I'll see you on our next episode, which is going to be on Friday.